Welcome. My name is Star Brumfield, and this is my insider view on nonprofit audits. I help organizations with intentional, accurate, and simplified financial practices. Come join me. Before I start, I just want to let you know I have a bonus at the end of the video, and it's a mini evaluation about nonprofit audits. Please stay tuned so you can benefit from that resource. In this mini webinar about nonprofit audits, we will uncover the basics of auditing and explore 3 benefits to the audit process. Let's begin with the question, how does the term audit make you feel? Many go into panic mode and have fear about an audit. They don't know what to expect or whether or not their accounting has been managed with excellence. Then there are others that embrace an audit with the confidence of knowing their financial records and systems are accurately maintained in accordance with nonprofit accounting standards. My hope is that you can explore an audit with fearless confidence, and let me tell you why. First off, what is an audit? An audit is not just a matter of determining if someone is stealing from your organization or making sure the money goes into the proper financial account. Audits go beyond this, and they examine 4 main things. 1, accounts and transactions. 2, financial records. 3, accounting practices. And 4, internal controls. Next, I want to talk briefly about 3 benefits of an audit: legal compliance, grant fulfillment, and best practices. When it comes to legal compliance, there's no federal law that requires all nonprofits to conduct an audit unless you are receiving grant funds from the government. Even then, there are certain thresholds and criteria to determine if an audit is needed. Now, on a state level, audit requirements vary depending on your state laws. You can see there in Arizona and Oregon, they do not require audits, but in my state of Tennessee, you are required an audit if you're receiving over $500,000 in annual revenue. You can also see there's certain criteria that excludes whether or not you need to do an audit. Let's move on to number 2. The benefit of an audit is grant fulfillment. I have a simple excerpt from a grant application question I came across. And in this application, an audit was needed if our budget exceeded $250,000. If our organization did not meet this criteria, it would disqualify us from applying for this grant. And what I found in the grant world is that many foundations with smaller grants, say under $20,000, they generally don't request a copy of an audit. However, they may want a copy of a recent audit if it's available, or they will ask you to attach a copy of your most recent financial statements. It would be preferred to have an audit, but in some cases it is optional. Either way, grant makers really want to understand your financial health and sustainability, so it's fantastic if you have a certified public accountant that signs off on an audit. Now that we've looked at legal compliance and grant fulfillment, let's talk about best practices. This one is so important because it eliminates any rogue nonprofit that may want to do things their own way, or they're not really managed properly in accordance with the standards of the accounting industry. But it also builds confidence, transparency, and trust with key stakeholders. So you've got your staff, your board, donors, grant makers, the general public, and yes, charity raters. By charity raters, as some would call charity watchdogs, I'm referring to Better Business Bureau Wise Giving, Charity Watch, and others. I'm sharing a new policy that requires disclosure of your methods used to allocate cost among program and support functions. That's your program, fundraising, and management expenses from your 990. And really, most charity raters will give the poor ratings to nonprofits if your overhead exceeds 35%. Plus, there are donors and grant makers that want to know how much do you spend on your management expenses. Some will call it administrative cost or overhead. As a public entity, you need to know your ratio for management cost, and you must have a written method that explains your cost allocation process. I actually love this topic and can talk for a long time, but perhaps I'll do that in another video. I just want to summarize that auditing is a best practice while building confidence and trust with the public. If you're going through an audit with a qualified accounting firm, you are being transparent and accountable, which is very reassuring to your supporters. Now it's time for the mini evaluation I mentioned earlier. I have 5 yes or no questions, and I'd like you to give yourself 20 points if you answer yes and 0 if you answer no. You can write them down or easily keep track of them as you read these questions. And at the end, I encourage you to total your score and gauge how well you did. Hopefully you got at least 80%, if not 100%. But if you're unhappy with your score, I encourage you to open the conversation up with your executive team or board chair. And perhaps you need to introduce a policy to have an audit at least every 3 years, especially if your budget exceeds, say, $100,000. Here are 2 helpful links that can assist with more information about auditing. The first is the Nonprofit Audit Guide by the National Council of Nonprofits. And the second you see is a comparison of the audit, review, and compilation, which was presented by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I want to quickly mention that although a full audit is pricey, you can consider a financial review or compilation for now. That link, the second one there, has a side-by-side comparison on page 5 and 6, so you can determine which one of those is best for your organization. And if you want a cost-saving strategy, you can send me an email and chat more on 2 ways that our organization saved over 20% for our audit. In closing, I want to thank you for joining me on this mini webinar. My goal was to build your confidence through the why of auditing. The audit experience doesn't have to be daunting if you have the right mindset and information along the way. Lastly, I invite you to visit our website at npaccountingbliss.com or like us on Facebook so you can receive more accounting resources to help you develop intentional, accurate, and simplified accounting practices.